Hello, everyone. I've got another story for you about my unfaithful wife. I still have trust issues with her, but I'm going to contact her affair partner soon, despite agreeing to no contact and the consequence of divorce. It's almost been a year since I found out about the affair, so here's my story. We're both in our mid-40s and have been together for over 30 years since high school. We have two teenage children. My wife has been a stay-at-home mom for most of the last 15 years, while I work hard and have a stressful but well-paid job. I had a job that paid the bills and looked after our family. A few years ago, my wife and I went through the traumatic experience of losing one of our children. I found it harder than she did. I tried to stay strong for her and our other children. She had bereavement counseling, but it didn't help her. She was all over the place mentally because of our loss, and things got worse with our marriage. About 2 years ago, we had a huge fight where I said some pretty nasty things and called her names, but I didn't hit her. I was young and immature and didn't apologize for my behavior, which led to a lack of communication and us not talking to each other. I turned to alcohol and became depressed about the whole situation. This time last year, I was thinking about getting a divorce because I wanted things to improve. We were getting there, but I knew we both had to change for that to happen. As a last resort, I suggested marriage counseling, but she declined. I decided to go for individual counseling instead, which helped me a lot. I gave up drinking, lost weight, and got into my best ever physical shape with lots of exercise. My mental health and attitude towards my wife improved, and we were both happier. We were just starting to become. We were intimate again, and it looked like our marriage could survive, so things were looking up again. Then, by sheer chance, I discovered her affair. In retrospect, there were lots of red flags, but I always trusted her and assumed she would never cheat on me. I did some snooping and confronted her with only a small amount of what I knew initially. The affair was denied, and I got trickle truth. For example, she told me that she had only kissed her partner a few times. She told me she'd only kissed her a few times, but there were a few inconsistencies in her story. I caught her off guard with the confrontation and my questions. The next day, I was ready to show her the proof that they'd gone beyond kissing. She admitted to having unprotected sex with the affair partner on more than one occasion, but it was over now and he'd finished. The physical affair had started not long after our big drunken argument the year before. She came out with the classic line, "I still loved you, but was no longer in love with you." She recently told me that because of the arguments, she thought I no longer loved her when her affair started. This was not true. I did still love her despite our problems. She would have found out if we were communicating. I made sure I was communicating with her and asked her to hand over her phone. She gave me the passcode and passwords to her email and social media apps. I read all the messages and saw that there were gaps in the chats, probably removed just before she confessed to the physical affair. By then, I had pretty much the full story. The day after, I messaged the other guy from my wife's phone. I wanted to hear his side of the story and to give him a warning if he carried on seeing my wife. His story matched my wife's version. He had finished the physical affair because he didn't want to damage both families. He wanted a life with his betrayed spouse, not my wayward spouse. He told me what an amazing person my wife was. She had fallen for him, and that's when he ended it because it was getting too serious. He was pretty serious about it. He apologized to me and said that he would tell his wife what he had done. I told him that was up to him, as I didn't want someone else to suffer the pain I had suffered. I told him that if he ever saw my wife again, then I would tell his wife. I didn't tell him to break off contact because my plan was to install keylogger software on my wife's phone. Bear in mind that we were in lockdown at this point in time, so there was no way they could see each other for the first few weeks. It was the middle of lockdown at the time, so there was no way they could see each other for the first few weeks. They would message each other. My wife told her that her partner was aware of their affair. He didn't tell her that I had messaged him. It was interesting to watch this unfold. They were now having arguments and blaming each other for their affair. My wife was trying to stop me kicking her out of our house. She was sending me lots of love and support, but at the same time she was blaming me for her affair and saying I treated her badly. She also said she wished they could see each other and chat properly about what happened. She seemed to show some remorse for how much her actions had hurt me. She admitted to me that she had been selfish. I asked her if she'd ever cheated on me before. She said that it was her one and only affair. I'm now suspicious that she had a one-night stand with a former boyfriend many years ago, but I have no proof. I asked her if she'd ever cheated on me before. She said that it was her one and only affair. I'm now suspicious that she had a one-night stand with a former boyfriend many years ago, but I have no proof. She said she'd fallen back in love with me because I'd changed for the better. As we all know, actions speak louder than words. You cannot believe a word that despite everything, she was still sending messages to him. They were just innocent messages about their shared hobby, which is where they first met and got to know each other as friends. I found a lawyer to discuss my options and see how things would look should we divorce. My wife overheard some of the conversation, and this seemed to wake her up to the reality of the situation. My wife sent a final message to the affair partner telling him that she would not be chatting any longer and that he was not to get in touch with her ever again. Contact between them did stop, and at this point I set some boundaries and the consequences should she break them. One of the rules was no contact or seeing the affair partner ever again, and if he contacted her to let me know. I told her that if she broke that rule, I'd divorce her. She agreed to this, and I told her she needed counseling to work on herself and find out why she did what she did. She agreed, although she said she felt forced to go, but only went twice and then stopped, telling me she already knew the reason for her affair, so didn't need any more counseling. I saw the same counselor a few times. Despite client confidentiality, my counselor told me my wife was remorseful. This was a few months ago. My wife and I have been getting on better than ever. I do love her, but I have not forgiven her yet. There has been no contact between my wife and her affair partner, but I have reason to believe that may change shortly. Given all that information, I have a few questions. 1. Does anyone think my wife might be able to make things right and stay faithful to me, or should I give her space? Should she contact the affair partner again, even though it will be to chat about something innocent? Should I file for divorce, as she will have broken the no-contact rule? 3. If divorce is not the answer, is there anything else she or I should do for a successful reconciliation? All right, I'm coming at you with as I thought might happen. My wife has contacted her affair partner. She will now have to face the consequences. To give you a quick recap, we have been together for over 30 years. We started dating in high school 2 years ago. At that time, my wife and I were going through a rough patch, and she had an affair. It was 12 months ago, at the start of the lockdown. My wife didn't know, but I read some of their messages. It seemed like the physical affair was over, but they were still in contact. I later found out that he'd finished the physical affair 7 months before D-Day. I think it was probably because my wayward spouse had fallen in love with him, and he was never going to leave his wife. She was upset and hurt that he had dumped her, especially as he had told my wife that he loved her. They remained friends and continued to message each other. My wife told him that she could not get him out of her head. This time last year, I had never heard of Reddit. I did not know who to ask for help or advice. I know my methods are a bit messed up, but my cunning plan was to try and get the whole truth about the affair. I wanted to find out if there was any hope of saving our marriage. It's not easy when you can't believe what a cheater says. My wife couldn't see the affair partner, so I assumed she'd contact him using her phone to tell him that I knew about their affair. This was while we were trying to fix things. I could see their messages without my wife knowing. Here are some of the highlights. They both lied to each other and blamed each other for the affair. He said their friendship crossed the line was crossed, and he regretted what they did. My wife never said she regretted the affair. He cherished their moments together, but also wanted to try and forget it ever happened. It was a bit of an oxymoron. My wife told him that she hated him and that he had used her. He denied this, but other times she said that she missed him. It was a bit contradictory. She said that she was broken and that she could not live with the hurt she had caused me. So at times she did display some signs of remorse. On a number of occasions, she said that she would not be able to see him again. She told me she wasn't going to contact him again. A few days later, she messaged him. Over the next 6 months, I got myself into great physical shape, had individual counseling, and experienced hysterical bonding. My wife told me she'd made a huge mistake and wanted a future with me. I meant the world to her, and she'd fallen back in love with me. I asked her if she could go back in time, and she said she'd do things differently if she could. She'd make sure a good friendship doesn't turn into an affair. She'd fix things between us before the affair started. She told me she'd accept any consequences, but she begged me not to tell our kids what she'd done. Our kids don't deserve to be hurt. The truth is, she didn't want them to hate her. On the plus side, my wayward spouse didn't say anything. She wasn't derogatory about me to the affair partner, at least not from the messages I've read. But she must have said stuff about our marriage to him previously. He said things like, "I hope you can correct the things that were wrong between you. I hope you can move forward." On the negative side, my wayward spouse told him that I loved her and she was going to be okay, presumably because she thought I was not going to. She never told the other person that she loved me. At one point, she got angry and said that all she needed was her kids. She never said that she needed me or loved me. 6 months ago, I thought it was going to be impossible to reconcile. I called a lawyer to discuss my options. My wife listened to some of the conversation. I don't know how much she heard, but it was a wake-up call. I gave her a call. She needed that wake-up call. Her attitude changed, and she finally broke off contact with the affair partner. I set some boundaries and consequences, the main one being no contact under any circumstances. Otherwise, I will divorce her. She agreed to all my conditions. Given all the messages I had read between them, I was doubtful that she would not contact him again. But for 5 months, she did not. She stuck to her word and didn't contact him, and things seemed to be going well between us. A few weeks ago, though, my wife found out from a mutual friend that the other guy has an incurable disease. I thought she'd contact him, and she did. She's betrayed my trust yet again. The messages were innocent enough to begin with. She sent him positive thoughts and hoped that she said the treatment would be a success, but then she sent a message saying, "Get better soon and look forward to seeing you soon." The final blow to my broken heart was when she asked, "Do you regret meeting me? There's nothing left worth fighting for. I know divorce will cause me and our children hurt and financial hardship. I know she has mental issues, but she isn't willing to get help, and I can't force her to. I know there's no point in trying to understand her actions further, but I still wonder how she could do this to me and our children. I'm going to speak to a lawyer again, this time without her knowing, and get her served. I hope to get joint custody of our children, and the starting point of the split of our financial assets will be 50-50ths. I'm going to try to get more than this by any means necessary. I'm going to receive some inheritance once the house of my deceased relative is sold. I also have Bitcoin that I purchased a few years ago, and the value of this has increased quite a bit. I also have a large pension pot. Is it possible to prevent my soon-to-be ex-wife from getting her hands on the proceeds? It looks like my wife is going to get her hands on the proceeds. I'll have to wait and see what the community has to say. Wendy Sales 76 says that the problem with reconciliation is that you're not only fighting your own demons, but basically competing with the emotional attachment between the wayward wife and her affair partner. There are many reasons why many people on here say you shouldn't stay with her. We've been through this and know that the love fog you have with your wife is just as strong as their cheating fog. But at least for you, you've learned a lesson. Most wayward spouses never really get over their referral partners. Good luck, friend. Affair partners are often less attractive and never did anything for their partners, especially in comparison to what their spouses did for them. Years of being there for them, sharing life with them, the gifts, the kids, the memories, the vacations, etc. seem to pale in comparison to some excitement. They gave up everything for someone who is simply using you for sex. They become obsessed with them. It's crazy when you look at my wife's affair partners. They weren't even good looking, nor were they rich, and they weren't good guys. But when you're a narc and there's some new male attention to be had, I guess you have to pounce. I think it's fair to say that a surprising number of wayward spouses downgrade and then upgrade. The downgrades have to be made up for by creating a fantasy world for the wayward spouse. On the other end, the wayward spouse wants to feel in love again and wants all that attention. They feel abandoned by the betrayed spouse and think of their marriage as a mistake. They want to get out. Unfortunately, most wayward spouses suffer from low self-confidence and negative body image. Even if they look like models, they think they're not good enough. So they rush to anyone who'll throw them a bone and are willing to spend time creating their made-to-order fantasy world. I'm curious, what happened after your wayward spouse broke up with the affair partner? Did she try to come back? Do you have kids? Even if they look like models, they still have low confidence and a negative body image. This means they rush to anyone who throws them a bone and is willing to spend time creating their made-to-order fantasy world. I'm curious, what happened after your wayward spouse broke up with the affair partner? Did she try to come back? Do you have kids?